She came to plan the Alpha King's wedding. She was nothing more than a servant, unseen among the silks and flowers she arranged for another woman's happily ever after. Carenza had learned long ago that unseen was the safest thing to be. The mark on her shoulder proved what happened when you were noticed, when you were known, when you dared to want more than shadows. She was the daughter of a traitor, cast out, branded, forgotten. The wedding planner who would ensure the most powerful alpha in 3 kingdoms married his perfect, beautiful, noble bride. That was all she was ever meant to be. But then, standing at the altar before 500 witnesses, Alpha King Soren did the unthinkable. He looked past his bride. He looked directly at Carenza. And he spoke 2 words that shattered everything. Not her. He walked down the aisle, away from the princess in white, and stopped in front of a servant with no name, no title, no face worth remembering. You, he said. I choose you. He offered her everything, his crown, his protection, his name, but only under one condition. He would never love her. Neither of them knew that promise would be the first of many lies they'd tell themselves. The great cathedral of Valdrin had never looked more beautiful, and Carenza had never felt more overlooked. She stood in the shadows behind the last column, watching servants carry armfuls of white roses to the altar. Crystal chandeliers caught the morning light and scattered it across marble floors like scattered diamonds. 500 chairs had been arranged in perfect rows, each one draped in silk the color of fresh snow. Everything was flawless. It had to be. This was the wedding of Alpha King Soren of Valdrin to Princess Venetia of the Southern Realm. The political union that would end 3 generations of border conflict. The marriage that would reshape the continent. And Carenza had planned every detail. Not that anyone would ever know. The head coordinator, a round man named Dremmer who smelled of pipe smoke and self-importance, would take credit for her work. He always did. Carenza was simply the assistant, the girl who handled the actual labor while Dremmer handled the actual bowing. She preferred it that way. Unseen meant safe. Unseen meant no one looked too closely at the servant with no family name, no references, and no history before 5 years ago. No one wondered about the high collar she always wore, even in summer. No one asked about the brand hidden beneath the fabric. You there, girl? Carenza flinched before she could stop herself. A woman in crimson silk was striding toward her, irritation sharpening her delicate features. Lady Orlin, the princess's chief attendant and professional tormentor of anyone beneath her station. The floral arrangements on the east side are uneven, Lady Orlin announced. Fix them, now, before Her Highness arrives for the rehearsal. Carenza dipped her head. Yes, my lady. She didn't point out that the arrangements were mathematically identical. She'd measured them herself. Twice. Lady Orlin didn't want perfection. She wanted submission. And Carenza had learned long ago that submission was a small price for safety. She was adjusting flowers that needed no adjusting when the cathedral doors opened. The sound hit her first. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Accompanied by the metallic whisper of armed guards. Then the scent. Pine and wood smoke and something beneath it. Something ancient and wild that made her wolf stir for the first time in years. Carenza's hands froze on a rose stem. Her chest tightened. Alpha. Not just any alpha. This was power so absolute it pressed against her skin like a physical weight. Every wolf in the cathedral felt it. Servants stumbled. Guards straightened. Even Lady Orlin went rigid, her arrogance crumbling into something like fear. Carenza knew she shouldn't look. Looking meant being seen. Being seen meant danger. But her body betrayed her. She turned. And there he was. Alpha King Soren of Valdrin stood in the center aisle, flanked by 4 guards in black armor. He was tall, broad-shouldered, built like something designed for war rather than ceremony. Dark hair fell across his forehead, and his jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Amber, the color of flames trapped in honey, and utterly, completely empty. He looked like a man walking to his execution rather than his wedding. Dremmer rushed forward, bowing so deeply his forehead nearly touched the floor. "Your Majesty, we are honored beyond measure. The preparations are nearly—" "I don't care about the preparations." The king's voice was flat, distant. "Where is the princess?" "She's arriving within the hour, Your Majesty. If you'd like to wait in the—" "I'll wait here." It wasn't a request. Carenza forced herself to turn back to the flowers, to become a shadow again, but her hands were trembling. Her wolf was pacing inside her chest, restless in a way it hadn't been since the day her magic was bound. "What's wrong with you?" she thought desperately. "He's the king. He's getting married. He's nothing to you." But she could feel it, a prickling at the back of her neck. The unmistakable sensation of being watched. Slowly, against every instinct screaming at her to stay hidden, Carenza looked up. The Alpha King was staring directly at her. His flame-colored gaze locked onto hers through the forest of flower arrangements, through the chaos of servants and silk and scattered light. His expression didn't change. He didn't smile or frown or react at all. He just looked at her, as if he could see straight through her carefully constructed obscurity. As if he could see everything she was hiding. The wedding began exactly on schedule. Carenza had positioned herself in the servants' corridor behind the altar, hidden behind a velvet curtain. She could see everything through a small gap in the fabric. The 500 guests in their finest clothes, the nervous priest clutching his ceremonial book, the 4 groomsmen standing stiffly beside the altar, and the king. Soren stood perfectly still, hands clasped behind his back, face carved from stone. He hadn't looked toward the servants' corridor once. Whatever strange moment had passed between them earlier, it was gone now. She'd imagined it. She must have. "Stop being foolish," Carenza told herself. "He's a king. You're no one." The music swelled. Every head turned toward the great doors as they swung open, revealing Princess Venetia in a gown of white silk and pearls. She was stunning. Golden hair cascaded over her shoulders. Her smile was practiced perfection, and her eyes sparkled with triumph as she began her walk down the aisle. This was the woman who would be queen. This was the woman who deserved a king. Carenza watched the princess glide toward the altar, watched the guests murmur in admiration, and watched everything unfold exactly as she'd planned. In a few minutes, vows would be exchanged. The kingdom would have its queen, and Carenza would slip away to whatever anonymous life awaited her next. This was how it should be. The princess reached the altar. The music faded. The priest cleared his throat. "Beloved guests, we gather today to witness—" Stop. One word. Quiet, but it cut through the cathedral like a blade. The priest's mouth hung open. The princess blinked. 500 guests went utterly still. Soren stepped forward, away from his position at the altar. His face remained expressionless, but something had shifted in his posture, something coiled and dangerous. "Your Majesty?" the priest stammered. "Is something? This marriage will not proceed." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Princess Venetia's perfect smile cracked. "Soren." She reached for his arm. "What are you doing? We agreed." "You agreed." He stepped out of her reach. "I never wanted this. I told you. I told the council. None of you listened. But the alliance can be negotiated without selling me to a woman I will never love." The princess's eyes flashed with fury. "You're embarrassing me. You'll survive embarrassment." Soren turned away from her, away from the altar, and began walking down the aisle. The crowd parted like water before a storm. Whispers exploded through the pews. "What is he doing? Has he gone mad? The alliance is ruined. But the king wasn't listening. He was walking with purpose, with certainty, his eyes fixed on something beyond the noble guests and their horrified faces. He was walking toward the servants' corridor. Carence's blood turned to ice. No, she thought. No, no, no. He's not coming here. He can't be. But he was. The curtain was ripped aside, flooding her hiding spot with light. Carenza stumbled backward, her back hitting the stone wall, her pulse racing wildly. The Alpha King stood before her. This close, his presence was overwhelming. The power radiating from him made her wolf whimper, made her knees want to buckle, made every survival instinct scream at her to run. But she couldn't move. She couldn't breathe. "You," he said. His voice was low, rough, stripped of the distance he'd shown everyone else. And his eyes, those honey gold eyes that had looked so empty before, now burned with something she couldn't name. "Your Majesty," Carenza managed. "I don't understand. I'm just a servant. I plan the flowers. I don't—" "What's your name?" The question was soft, almost gentle. "Carenza," she whispered. He tilted his head, studying her as if she were a puzzle he was trying to solve. Behind him, the entire cathedral had dissolved into chaos. Princess Venetia was screaming something. Guards were shouting. The priest looked ready to faint. None of it seemed to touch him. "Carenza," he repeated, and somehow her name in his voice sounded like something precious. "I need a wife. I will not marry her." He glanced briefly over his shoulder at the princess. "I will marry you instead." The world stopped. "What?" Carenza heard herself say. "You have a choice." His eyes returned to hers, intent and unreadable. "Refuse, and you walk away. No consequences. I'll ensure no one bothers you. And if I accept, then you become my queen. You will have wealth, protection, and power beyond anything you've imagined." He paused. "But I should warn you, I am not offering love. I am not capable of it. This would be an arrangement, a contract, nothing more." Carenza stared at him. This was insane. He was insane. Kings didn't abandon their brides at the altar for nameless servants. This was a trick, or a trap, or a nightmare. She would wake from any moment. "Why me?" she breathed. "You don't know anything about me." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or resignation. That's precisely the point. Behind them, Princess Venetia's screams had turned to threats. Carenza heard words like ruined and war and, "My father will destroy you." But Soren didn't flinch. He simply extended his hand. "Choose," he said. The king's private study was smaller than Carenza expected. She'd imagined something grand, imposing, designed to intimidate. Instead, the room was almost comfortable. Bookshelves lined the walls, crammed with leather-bound volumes and scrolls. A fire crackled in the hearth despite the warm afternoon. Maps covered a heavy oak desk, their edges weighed down with smooth river stones. It felt like a sanctuary. Soren stood by the window, his back to her, silhouetted against gray afternoon light. He hadn't spoken since the guards escorted her from the cathedral. The chaos they'd left behind still echoed in her mind. Princess Venetia's threats, the council's outrage, the 500 guests who'd witnessed the most shocking event in Valdrin's history. And she, Carenza, nameless servant, was at the center of it. "You may sit," Soren said without turning. Carenza lowered herself into a chair across from the desk. Her legs were trembling. She'd spent the entire ride from the cathedral waiting for guards to seize her, waiting for someone to announce this was all a terrible joke, waiting to wake up. None of that happened. "Before we continue," the king said, "I should explain what I'm offering, and what I'm not." He turned to face her. In the firelight, his features seemed softer, younger. But his eyes remained ancient, guarded, haunted by something she couldn't identify. I need a wife. The council has made that clear. Without an heir, the succession is vulnerable. Without a queen, I'm seen as unstable, uncommitted to Valdrin's future. His jaw tightened. Princess Venetia was their choice, never mine. Then why agree to the wedding at all? Carenza asked quietly. Because I thought I could tolerate it. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I was wrong. When I saw her walking toward me in that cathedral, I knew I couldn't do it. Couldn't spend the rest of my life shackled to someone chosen by politics rather than... He stopped himself. It doesn't matter. Carenza's hands twisted in her lap. Your Majesty, with respect, you still haven't explained why you chose me. I have no title, no wealth, no family name. I'm the worst possible choice for a queen. You're the perfect choice. She blinked. I don't understand. Soren moved closer, lowering himself into the chair across from her. This close, she could see the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He looked exhausted. He looked like a man carrying a weight no one could see. I watched you during the preparations, he said. You stayed in the shadows. You never drew attention. You worked while others took credit. You moved through that cathedral like a ghost. Carenza's chest tightened. So you chose me because I'm forgettable? I chose you because you ask for nothing. His voice dropped. Everyone wants something from me. Power, influence, access to the crown. But you? You hid behind a curtain during my wedding. You expected nothing, wanted nothing. That's not entirely accurate, Carenza murmured. I wanted the flowers to be symmetrical. His expression shifted just barely, almost a smile, almost human. Here are my terms, he said, leaning forward. You will marry me. You will become queen. You will want for nothing. Wealth, comfort, protection, all of it will be yours. In exchange, you will give me heirs to secure the succession. Carenza's breath caught. And beyond that? Beyond that, we will live separate lives. You will have your own chambers, your own staff, and your own freedom. We will appear together at state functions. We will perform our duties, but in private. He paused. The fire crackled. In private, I will not pretend to be something I'm not. I am not a loving man, Carenza. I'm not capable of it. Whatever warmth you see in other marriages, in other wolves, I cannot offer you. Carenza studied him, trying to understand. Most alphas craved connection. The mate bond was sacred to their kind, a tie that strengthened both wolves, brought comfort, and brought joy. Why would any alpha reject that? May I ask why? She ventured. His jaw locked. No. The word was a wall. Absolute. I'm offering you a crown, he continued. Safety. A life far better than whatever awaits you as a servant. All I ask in return is that you accept my limitations. Your limitation being that you'll never love me. Yes. Carenza thought of the brand on her shoulder. The mark that identified her as a traitor's daughter, an outcast, a woman with no future and no hope. She thought of the past 5 years spent scrubbing floors and arranging flowers and praying no one would look at her too closely. She thought of her father's execution, her mother's screams, the soldiers who'd held her down while the hot iron pressed into her flesh, and she thought of this man, this king, who was offering her everything she'd never dared want. There's something you should know, she said quietly, before you make this official. Soren's eyes sharpened. Go on. Carenza's hand moved instinctively to her shoulder, to the raised scar hidden beneath her high collar. I'm not who you think I am. I'm hiding something. Something that could destroy you if it became public. She expected him to demand answers, to insist on knowing everything before proceeding. Instead, he simply nodded. I know. Carenza froze. What? I know you're hiding something. He leaned back, his expression unreadable. I don't know what it is, and I don't need to. Everyone has secrets. Yours don't concern me unless you choose to share them. But I could be anyone. I could be dangerous. Are you? She thought about it. Really thought about it. No, she admitted. I'm just broken. That near smile returned to his face, sad and knowing. Then we match perfectly. He stood, extending his hand just as he had in the cathedral. Do we have an agreement, Carenza? Will you be my queen? Will you accept a marriage without love, a contract without passion, a crown without the fairy tale? She looked at his hand. Strong fingers, elegant and capable, a king's hand. Then she looked at his eyes, empty, guarded, hiding something as surely as she was. Distance over danger, she thought, remembering every blow she'd endured, every sneer, every moment of being less than nothing. He wasn't offering love, but he wasn't offering cruelty either. Yes, she said, placing her hand in his. I accept your terms. His fingers closed around hers, and for just a moment so brief she might have imagined it, something warm passed through those amber eyes, something almost like relief. Then it was gone. The wedding will be in 3 days, he said, releasing her hand. I'll have servants prepare your chambers. A seamstress will attend to your gown. If you need anything, Your Majesty. He paused at the door. You said you'll never love me, Carenza continued. That it's your only condition. Can you at least tell me why? Soren stood motionless, his hand on the doorframe. The firelight painted shadows across his face, turning him into something half beautiful, half terrifying. Because loving me is a death sentence, he said quietly. And I refuse to kill another person I care about. Then he was gone. And Carenza sat alone in the firelight, her hand still tingling from his touch, wondering what kind of monster she'd just agreed to marry. The next 3 days passed in a blur of silk and whispers. Carenza had been moved to chambers in the East Wing, rooms so lavish she was afraid to touch anything. A canopied bed dominated the space, draped in fabric softer than anything she'd ever felt. Fresh flowers appeared each morning. Servants brought meals on silver trays. A seamstress arrived with bolts of fabric in ivory and gold, measuring and pinning and clucking over Carenza's thin frame. The queen must look like a queen, the woman muttered, her mouth full of pins. The queen. Every time someone used that word, Carenza felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She hadn't seen Soren since their conversation in the study. He'd sent messages through servants, formal notes about schedules and protocols and expectations. Nothing personal, nothing warm, nothing to suggest he thought of her at all. This is what you agreed to, she reminded herself. A contract, nothing more. But on the morning of the wedding, when she stood before the mirror in a gown of white silk embroidered with silver thread, she couldn't stop her hands from trembling. The woman staring back at her looked like a stranger, hair swept up and adorned with tiny pearls, face painted with subtle color, shoulders covered by the high-necked gown she'd specifically requested, hiding the brand that would destroy everything. She looked almost beautiful. She looked almost like she belonged. It's time, Your Highness. Carenza flinched at the title. A servant stood in the doorway, head bowed, waiting to escort her to the cathedral. The same cathedral where, 3 days ago, another bride had walked toward the same king. The cathedral felt different this time. The flowers were the same, the roses she'd arranged herself still standing in perfect symmetry. The chandeliers still scattered light across marble floors, but the energy had shifted. Where Princess Venetia's wedding had hummed with political triumph, this ceremony crackled with something else. Suspicion, curiosity. barely concealed hostility. Carenza felt every eye as she walked down the aisle. The guests weren't admiring her gown or her carefully styled hair. They were searching, analyzing, trying to understand what spell this nameless servant had cast over their king. Who is she? No family, no connections, nothing. There must be something, some secret. The whispers sliced at her, but Carenza kept her gaze fixed forward. On the altar. On the man waiting there. Soren stood in black, just as he had 3 days ago, but something was different in his posture, less rigid, less like a man facing execution. When their eyes met, he inclined his head slightly, almost a greeting, almost warm. Carenza reached the altar. The ceremony proceeded quickly. Vows were exchanged, words she barely heard over the roaring in her ears. When Soren took her hand to slide a ring onto her finger, his touch was cool. Not frozen, but cool like stone in shadow. By the authority vested in me, the priest announced, I pronounce you husband and wife, alpha and queen, bound by law and sacred vow. It was done. She was married. She was queen. The thought felt absurd, like wearing a costume that didn't fit. But before she could process it, a commotion erupted near the cathedral doors. This is an outrage? Princess Venetia swept down the aisle, her crimson gown billowing behind her like flames. Her golden hair was loose, wild, and her beautiful face was twisted with fury. Guards moved to intercept her, but she sidestepped them with the ease of someone who'd been navigating courts her entire life. You think this is over? Venetia stopped at the base of the altar, her eyes fixed on Carenza with pure hatred. You think you've won something? Venetia. Soren's voice was calm, dangerously calm. You weren't invited. I don't need an invitation. I'm the woman you humiliated, the woman you cast aside for. Her lip curled as she looked Carenza up and down. This. Carenza's hands clenched at her sides, but she kept her expression neutral. She'd survived worse than insults. She'd survived branding irons. My marriage is not your concern, Soren said. Leave, now. Not until your little bride understands what she's stepped into. Venetia moved closer, her voice dropping to a hiss meant only for Carenza. I know you're hiding something. No one appears from nowhere. No one has no past. And when I discover what you really are, she smiled, and it was the smile of a predator scenting blood. I'll be there to watch you fall. Enough. Soren stepped between them, his body shielding Carenza from Venetia's venom. The alpha power radiating from him pressed against everyone in the cathedral, heavy and suffocating. You will leave my wife alone. You will leave my kingdom within the week. And if I hear that you've spoken a single word against my queen, there will be consequences. Venetia's eyes widened. For a moment, genuine fear flickered across her perfect features. Then she composed herself, lifting her chin. This isn't over, she said. It's only beginning. She turned and swept out of the cathedral, leaving silence in her wake. Soren didn't move until the doors closed behind her. Then he turned to Carenza, his expression unreadable. Are you all right? The question was soft, almost concerned. Yes, Carenza managed. I've dealt with worse. A glint of curiosity passed through his gaze, or perhaps recognition. I imagine you have, he said quietly. Then he offered his arm. Come, wife, we have a wedding feast to endure. The feast lasted for hours. Carenza sat beside Soren at the high table, picking at food she couldn't taste, smiling at nobles whose names she couldn't remember. Venetia's words echoed in her skull. When I discover what you really are, she would discover it. Eventually, someone always did. Finally, mercifully, the feast ended. Soren escorted her through torch-lit corridors to the royal chambers. The room was dominated by a massive bed draped in deep blue velvet. A fire burned in the hearth, casting dancing shadows across stone walls. Carence's throat tightened. This was it. The consummation. The duty she'd agreed to when she accepted his terms. There's something I should tell you. Soren's voice broke the silence. He stood near the window, his back to her, silhouetted against the moon. You don't have to explain anything, Carence said quickly. I understand the arrangement. I'm prepared to fulfill my... I won't touch you tonight. She stopped mid-sentence. What? He turned to face her. In the firelight, his features seemed softer, almost vulnerable. The contract requires heirs. I won't pretend otherwise. But not tonight. He moved toward a chair near the hearth. Tonight, you should rest. Adjust. I won't add to your burdens. Something shifted in Carence's chest. Something warm and dangerous. You don't have to be kind to me, she said quietly. That wasn't part of our agreement. No. He met her eyes. It wasn't. But he was being kind anyway. There's a bathing chamber through that door, Soren said. Fresh clothes have been laid out. If you need anything, pull the cord by the bed. Where will you sleep? Here. He gestured to the chair. Don't argue. I've slept in worse conditions during campaigns. Words failed her. She gave a small nod and retreated to the bathing chamber. When she emerged, dressed in a soft sleeping gown, the fire had burned low. Soren sat where she'd left him, his eyes closed, his breathing even. Asleep. Carence studied him in the dim light. In sleep, the distance melted from his features. He looked younger, almost peaceful. She climbed into the massive bed, sinking into softness she'd never known. The sheets carried his familiar scent. Sleep came slowly, but when it finally pulled her under, her last thought was of those honey-gold eyes and unexpected kindness. She woke to darkness. Soren had moved from the chair to the bed at some point during the night. He lay on top of the covers, fully clothed, as far from her as possible while still sharing the mattress. He'd kept his distance even in sleep. Even unconscious, he was honoring his promise. Carence lay in the darkness, listening to him breathe, wondering how a man could be so distant and so careful at the same time. The weeks that followed became something neither of them expected. Carence fell into a rhythm. Mornings in the library, afternoons walking the castle grounds, evenings dining alone, waiting. Always waiting. Because every night, without fail, Soren came to her. At first, he simply sat by the fire, speaking little. Carence learned to give him space, to let silence exist between them without filling it. Gradually, the silences became conversations. The northern borders are restless, he told her one night. Raiders from across the mountains. The council wants war. What do you want? He glanced at her, surprised by the question. I want peace. But peace requires strength, and strength sometimes requires bloodshed. Another night, he asked about her. Where did you come from? Before the cathedral. Where were you? Carence's hand moved instinctively to her shoulder. Nowhere important. He didn't push. He never pushed. The consummation happened eventually, not as duty, but as something that grew between them naturally. One night his hand found hers by the fire. Another night he brushed hair from her face, his touch lingering. And finally, inevitably, they came together. He was careful, patient, so gentle that Carence almost forgot the distant king who'd declared he would never love her. Afterward, he held her in the darkness, his cool skin against her warmth. You're so warm, he murmured against her hair. And you're always cool. Why is that? He tensed beside her. A family trait. It wasn't an answer. She knew that. But she also knew not to push. The pattern continued. He came to her every night now. Sometimes they talked for hours. Sometimes they fell into each other without words. Sometimes he simply held her while she slept, his arms wrapped around her like he was afraid she might disappear. Carenza noticed things. The way he shivered even when the fire roared. The way his hands trembled sometimes, almost imperceptibly. The way his skin grew cooler as the weeks passed, as if winter lived inside him. "Something's wrong," she said one evening. "Don't tell me it's nothing. Something is wrong with you, and I need to know what." Soren was silent for a long moment. "Why do you need to know?" "Because She hesitated, the truth catching in her throat. "Don't." His voice was sharp, pained. "Don't say it. Whatever you're about to say, don't." Carenza stared at him. "You don't even know what I was going to say." "I know exactly what you were going to say." He rose abruptly, putting distance between them. "And I'm telling you not to. For your own sake." "My sake?" "Carenza." Her name sounded like a warning. "I told you from the beginning. I cannot love you. I will not love you. This arrangement works because we both understand the boundaries. You come to my bed every night. You hold me like I'm precious. How can you expect me not to feel something? I expect you to survive." His expression was raw, anguished. "That's all I want." "Because the alternative?" "What alternative? What happens if I love you?" The question hung between them. Soren closed his eyes. When he opened them, they were empty again, the king returning to his throne. "Nothing good happens to anyone who loves me." Then he left, and Carenza sat alone by the dying fire, finally understanding the truth she'd been avoiding. She was in love with him, despite his warnings, despite his walls. She loved him, and that terrified her more than anything Venetia could ever threaten. 3 months into their marriage, Carenza discovered she was pregnant. The healer confirmed it on a gray morning while rain streaked the windows. Carenza sat motionless as the woman explained what she already knew. A child. An heir. The purpose of their entire arrangement fulfilled. "Shall I inform the king?" "No. I'll tell him myself." She spent the day watching rain fall, trying to understand the tangled emotions knotting her chest. Joy. Yes. But beneath it lurked fear. He had what he needed now. Would he still come to her at night? Or would he retreat behind his walls now that duty was satisfied? Soren arrived earlier than usual that evening. He stood in the doorway, rain still glistening in his dark hair, scanning her face with an intensity that made her breath catch. "You've been crying," he said. Carenza touched her cheek, surprised to find it damp. "It's nothing. Just tired." He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping close enough that she could smell the rain on his skin. "Don't lie to me. Whatever it is, tell me." The words rose before she could stop them. "I'm pregnant." Silence. Soren went utterly still. His eyes dropped to her stomach, then rose to her face. His expression cycled through shock, wonder, fear, and something else. Something that looked almost like grief. "You're certain?" The healer confirmed it this morning. Then Soren did something she didn't expect. He dropped to his knees. His hands found her waist, then slid forward to rest against her stomach. He pressed his forehead to her belly, his shoulders shaking. "Soren? What's wrong? I thought you'd be pleased." "I am pleased." His voice was muffled against her stomach. "You have no idea." "Then why are you crying?" He didn't answer. He simply held her, his body trembling with emotions she couldn't name. Finally he rose. His eyes were red, his cheeks wet, his careful control shattered. "I need to tell you something," he said. "Soren." "No. Listen." He took her hands, gripping them tight. "I've been unfair to you. From the beginning. I told you I couldn't love you, that our marriage was only a contract, that you should expect nothing from me but duty. I understood the terms. You understood lies." His teeth clenched. "I was lying to myself as much as you, because the truth is—" He stopped, his breath ragged. The truth is, I've loved you almost from the beginning. Since the night you asked about my coldness and I saw genuine concern in your eyes. Since you started leaving extra blankets by my chair. Since you looked at me like I was a man instead of a monster. Carenza's heart stuttered. You love me? I love you. The words seemed to cause him physical pain. And I'm sorry. Because loving you means... He stopped mid-sentence. His face went white. His hand flew to his chest, fingers clawing at his shirt, and he made a sound. A terrible, strangled sound like something was being ripped from inside him. Soren! Carenza grabbed his shoulders. What's happening? He collapsed. His body hit the floor, convulsing, frost spreading across his skin like ice crystallizing on a winter pond. His lips turned blue. His eyes rolled back. Help! Carenza screamed. Someone help us! Guards burst through the door. Servants rushed in. Chaos erupted, but Carenza barely noticed. She was on the floor beside him, cradling his head, watching frost consume the man she loved. Don't die, she whispered. Please don't die. You can't tell me you love me and then leave. His eyes fluttered open. Just for a moment. Run, he breathed. Before it takes you too. Then his eyes closed, and his heart stopped beating. The healers worked through the night. Carenza refused to leave his side. She sat beside his bed, gripping his frozen hand, watching frost spread inch by inch across his chest. His skin was translucent now, blue veins visible beneath the surface, his breath so shallow she had to lean close to detect it. What's happening to him? She demanded when the royal physician emerged. Tell me the truth. The physician exchanged glances with his assistants. Fear flickered across their faces. Your Majesty, he said carefully, what I'm about to tell you must never leave this room. Tell me. He took a breath. The king suffers from an ancestral curse, a dark magic placed on his bloodline 7 generations ago. Carenza's blood ran cold. What kind of curse? The kings of Valdrin cannot love. The physician's voice dropped to a whisper. If they ever truly fall in love, the curse activates. Their hearts freeze. They die. The world tilted. That's why he was always cool. Carenza breathed. The curse was already working on him. The curse lies dormant until love awakens it, then it consumes them. The physician looked at Soren's frozen form with pity. His father died the same way, and his grandfather before him. Carenza's mind raced. There must be a cure. None that we know of. The curse was cast by a powerful witch. Only magic of equal strength could counter it. Then find a witch. Your Majesty. The physician hesitated. The very witch who cast this curse was the ancestor of a family that still holds power in this kingdom. They've ensured that no one with strong enough magic comes near the royal bloodline. Who? What family? The physician's face went pale. The family of Princess Venetia. Carenza stood over Soren's frozen body, her mind churning. Venetia's family had cursed the kings of Valdrin. For 7 generations, they'd ensured that no king could ever truly rule with a full heart. Every king who dared to feel had died, and Venetia had almost married him. She knew, Carenza realized, a king who couldn't love was a king who could be controlled. But Soren had chosen differently. He'd chosen Carenza. And now he was dying for it. She thought of everything she knew about curses, about magic, about the stories her father had told her as a child. Her father, the court mage of a distant kingdom, executed for treason when she was 16. Her father, who had taught her about elemental magic before the soldiers came. Her father, whose fire had burned so bright that they'd had to bind her magic when they branded her, afraid she'd inherited his power. Fire against ice. Carenza's hand flew to her shoulder, to the brand hidden beneath her gown. The binding, she breathed. If I could break it. But the binding was tied to the brand, and the brand could only be removed by the one who'd placed it. Her uncle, the man who'd ordered her father's execution, the man who'd betrayed him, claimed he was a traitor, destroyed their entire family. The man who now served Venetia's family had served them since trading his brother's life for their favor. Carenza's blood turned to ice colder than the frost consuming Sorin. It was all connected. Her father's execution, her branding, the curse on Valdrin's kings, Venetia's attempted marriage. One family, pulling strings for generations. Your Majesty? The physician's voice broke through her spiral. Are you all right? No. Carenza straightened, her spine turning to steel. But I will be. She turned to face him. I need to tell you something. Something that could save the king. She took a breath. I'm not just a servant with no past. I'm Carenza Vashir, daughter of Aldrich Vashir, the fire mage executed for treason 17 years ago. The physician's eyes went wide. My father was innocent. He was framed by his own brother, my uncle Mordecai, who wanted his position and his power. Carenza's voice hardened. And my uncle bound my magic when I was 16, branded me as a traitor's daughter, ensured I could never use what I inherited. She pulled aside her collar, revealing the raised scar on her shoulder, the brand of a traitor's bloodline. Because my magic was bound, it was undetectable. That's why I could get close to Sorin when other powerful magic couldn't. She met the physician's eyes. But if I can break this binding, I might be able to save him. Fire against ice. My father's magic against the curse that's killing him. The physician stared at her brand, then at her face. How do we break the binding? I have to confront my uncle, and I have to make him undo what he did. The Vashir estate lay 3 days' ride from Valdrin. Carenza made it in too. She rode through the night, pushing her horse to its limits. 2 of Sorin's most trusted guards accompanied her. Men who'd sworn loyalty to their queen without question. On the morning of the 2nd day, the estate emerged from morning mist like a ghost from her childhood. She'd grown up here, played in these gardens, learned magic at her father's knee before the soldiers came. Now she was returning as something else entirely. Stay here, she told the guards at the gate. If I don't return by nightfall, ride back to Valdren. Tell them everything. She dismounted and walked through gates she'd last passed in chains. Uncle Mordecai was older than she remembered. Gray streaked his dark hair now, and lines carved deep grooves around his mouth. But his eyes were the same, calculating, the eyes of a man who'd murdered his own brother for power. He sat in her father's study, in her father's chair. Carenza. His voice carried no surprise. I wondered when you'd come. You know why I'm here. I assume it has something to do with the Alpha King's mysterious illness. Mordecai smiled. News travels fast. They say he's dying, frozen from the inside. You know about the curse. Everyone who matters knows. Why do you think Venetia's family has been trying to marry into Valdrin for 3 generations? He stood, moving toward the fireplace. A king who can't love is a king who can be manipulated. Venetia would have been perfect. But he chose me instead. An unexpected complication. Mordecai's eyes narrowed. How did you manage that? No spell, just existence. Carenza stepped closer. He loved me, and now he's dying for it. As he should. Mordecai shrugged. The kings of Valdrin have ruled too long. The curse keeps them in check. Release my magic. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, I'll kill you anyway. Carenza's voice dropped to a whisper. And I'll find another way. I'll burn this estate to the ground. I'll burn Venetia's entire family. But I will save him. Mordecai studied her for a long moment. You really do love him. How delightful. Release my magic. And if I refuse? Carenza's hand shot out and closed around his throat. She didn't know where the strength came from. The binding should have prevented this. But something had cracked. Her desperation, her love, her absolute refusal to let Soren die, and power was bleeding through. Heat radiated from her palm. Mordecai's eyes went wide. You can't. The binding. Love is stronger than your chains. Her hand burned brighter. Release it, or I'll take it by force. Mordecai gasped, clawing at her grip, his composure finally shattering. Fine. The seal. It's in the lockbox. Behind the portrait. Carenza released him. He collapsed, wheezing. She found the lockbox, found the seal inside, a small bronze disc inscribed with binding runes. She closed her fist around it and squeezed. The metal screamed, the runes flared, and then the seal crumbled to ash. Power flooded back into Carenza like a river breaking through a dam. Fire. Pure, brilliant, devastating fire. It raced through her veins, burned away 17 years of suppression, filled her with light and heat and purpose. She turned back to Mordecai, who cowered against the wall. My father was innocent, she said, and you will confess to everything, or I will give you the death you gave him. She rode through the night again, but this time, fire burned inside her. Warmth radiated from her skin. Her horse ran faster, as if sensing the power coursing through its rider. Dawn was breaking over Valdrin when she burst through the castle gates. The king! She shouted at the guards. Where is he? The royal chambers, your majesty. But the healers say... She didn't wait. She ran. The royal chambers were frigid. Frost coated the walls, the furniture, and the very air. The healers had retreated to the corners, their faces pale with fear. And in the center of the bed, encased in ice, lay Soren. The frost had consumed him completely. His skin was blue-white, his lips colorless, and his chest motionless. He looked dead. Everyone out, Carenza commanded. They fled. Carenza climbed onto the bed, positioning herself over Soren's frozen body. She placed her hands on his chest, directly over his heart. I don't know if this will work, she whispered. I don't know if you can hear me, but I need you to know something. She closed her eyes. I love you, Soren. Not because you gave me a crown, not because you rescued me from obscurity. I love you because you saw me, because you were kind when you had no reason to be, because you loved me even though it was killing you. Heat gathered in her palms. You said loving you was a death sentence. You were wrong. The fire built, burning brighter. Loving you was a resurrection. She released everything. Fire poured from her hands into his chest, not destructive fire, but healing fire, purifying fire. The fire of a daughter of Aldrich Vashir, the greatest flame mage in 3 generations. The ice screamed. It cracked and hissed and fought back. Carenza gritted her teeth, pushing harder. You don't get to have him, she snarled at the darkness. He's mine. The ice shattered. Warmth flooded the room. Color returned to Soren's skin, pale at first, then pink, then warm and alive. His chest heaved. He gasped. His eyes flew open. Amber eyes, bright and clear, looking up at her with wonder. Carenza? His voice was hoarse. How? She collapsed onto his chest, sobbing. You're alive. His arms came around her, weak but real. I felt you, he whispered. Even in the dark, I felt you burning, calling me back. I wasn't going to let you go. She lifted her head. I broke the curse. My fire against their ice. It's gone, Soren. Forever. He stared at her. You saved me. We saved each other. He kissed her. Not gentle, desperate. Relief and love so overwhelming it burned brighter than any magic. When they broke apart, Soren's hand moved to her stomach. The baby? Fine. Perfect. Safe. She smiled. Your line is free. Every king after you can love without fear. He pulled her close, his body shaking with relief. 6 months after the curse was broken, their daughter was born. They named her Ember, for the fire that had saved her father's life. Mordecai confessed to everything. He was executed for treason, the real kind. Venetia and her family were stripped of their lands and banished to the frozen north where their ice magic had originated. Carenza's father was exonerated posthumously, his name restored, his legacy honored. And in the castle that had once felt like a prison, a king and queen built something neither had dared to hope for. One evening, as the sun set over Valdrin, Soren found Carenza in the gardens with Ember sleeping against her shoulder. "I've been thinking about our wedding," he said, settling beside her. "When I walked away from Venetia and chose you." "What about it?" Everyone asked why. I never properly answered. He took her hand. "The moment I saw you, hiding behind that curtain, I recognized you. Not your face. Your soul." Carenza's breath caught. "I knew that whatever you were hiding, it was something I understood. Something we shared." He lifted her hand to his lips. "I chose you because, for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "I was so afraid," she admitted. "I thought it was a trap. No one had ever been kind to me without wanting something." And now? She looked at their daughter, at the gardens blooming around them, at the man who had given her everything by asking for nothing. "Now I know the truth. We were both hiding, both convinced we didn't deserve to be loved. And we were both wrong. Wonderfully, beautifully wrong." He kissed her forehead, then her lips, then their sleeping daughter. "I love you," he said, "without conditions, without contracts, without fear. I love you too, forever." The sun sank below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. And in the fading light, the Alpha King and his queen held each other close, finally free, finally whole, and finally home.